That's like the cut sleeves. Hello? 1 second. I can't hear you. Oh, there you are.
Hello? Can you hear me? Oh,
Now
it
I can
takes a
hear
little
you.
while for me to come in.
How's it going?
It's going well. I've just been keeping myself busy with debate camp. What about you?
Um, I've just been doing my stream, looking at school, doing my stuff on the board. No, just doing me.
Nice. Um, I guess the conversation I wanted to bring to you was welfare. What is your opinion on welfare?
I believe that it's necessary to catch people when they fall upon hard times. And I think it's generally good for the economy.
All right. Um, so I don't disagree with the idea of welfare, but welfare in America is like indefensible. Like the programs we are funding
You're
are
right. It's not
inefficient.
enough.
I So what do you mean when you say that?
What I mean is, I don't think there's enough. I don't think there's enough safety nets for people. Definitely in comparison with other countries which have higher standards of living, and generally usually have larger welfare states.
Yeah. So when we say welfare, we should get real specific on what we mean. Uh, there are 7 major types of welfare in America. They include Medicaid, Supplemental Security Income, Supplemental Nutritious Assistance Program, Child's Health Insurance Program, Temporary Assistance to Needy Family, House Assistance, and the Earned Income Tax Credit. Um, this is what I differentiate welfare from Social Security.
Okay.
Um, so what I specifically think is that these programs are inefficient, and we should be doing other things to reduce poverty. I think some of the main ones that I like are reforming the criminal justice system to encourage a two-parent household situation, um, unions, and a decrease in taxes. Because in LBJ's War on Poverty, he spent 50 years uh, overall, billions of dollars, $8 billion in 1 year on each of these 8 fractions, and absolute poverty after 50 years has still not decreased.
Do you
So it
think that
doesn't seem like this
Do
really.
you think LBJ's war on poverty was a consistent, unified effort?
Um, on
Let
the
me.
welfare front, I
Let
think
me. 1 second.
50 years like steady,
This is a
like
bad. Okay. This is. Okay. 1 second. Let me fix my camera. Second. So LBJ is a president that I might know a little bit more than the average man.
um,
So here's the complete collection I own on LBJ. I recommend this to everyone. This is the series that includes Master of the Senate, Passage of Power, Means of Ascent, and Path to Power.
oh, don't.
It's written by Cairo, and it is the best series possibly out there on the career and times of LBJ. Now, and I recommend, it's a lot, and I think most people would never read all of this, but I do recommend it for anybody who's actually, like, I don't know, what cares about learning about the man.
So
And yeah, what?
yeah, so like tell me like your thesis of the book. Just what'd you learn? What is the
The
book
the
talk about?
problem, this book is about LBJ's career and his time in office and the stuff that he wanted to do and the stuff he did do, like how he got the Civil Rights Acts through and his time in the Senate and how he used levels of power extremely effectively. But he didn't get the full presidency that he wanted. And the other time when he was vice president, he was rivaling with JFK. LBJ was famously picked to be vice president, mostly because JFK just didn't want him in the Senate because LBJ was an extremely effective politician and he knew how to manipulate the Senate. But by the time LBJ left office, he did start his war on poverty. But when it comes to the grander society, the great society that he wanted to produce, many of the stuff that he wanted to put into place was not put into place and was watered down by administrations going forward. Most certainly once you get into like the Reagan era. You get into the Reagan era, it's completely undercut. I would even say that it was somewhat watered down when you get into like the Carter administration. Now, for you to say it's been
Well,
50 years and we've had this war on poverty is to assist to me like this idea that we've had this consistent codified effort from government to tackle poverty under the same model, which is incorrect. The Reagan administration thought that trickle-down economics would be what would tackle poverty. The Bush administration had, of course, the checks to persons individually, and he did the big tax cuts. Trump did something similar with tax cuts. Obama had a different policy than Bush and Trump. Biden has a different policy than of course, Trump. It was not a consistent, unified effort. And so to say, like, to paint this, I think is a historical, as it was a 50-year war on poverty and America walked away defeated. If I am a military strategist, if we're painting this as a war, if I, like, 1 year, I'm like, okay, we're going to take this strategy. And the next year, it's like, okay, now this strategy. Okay, then this year, with this strategy. You're not going to make any progress. You need a consistent, unified effort. And when we do have consistent unified efforts, that means like programs that stay around, like Social Security, even though you don't consider it welfare, or if we child tax credits is a great example. These things have been showed clearly to reduce poverty. Now, Social Security, especially with the elderly, that is undisputable. Now, when we talk about like safety nets given to people, they will stop them from going into abject poverty, and it is the objective of the government to try to get those people into work programs from that position. So my position on welfare, if we're talking about the idea of somebody falls from grace and they're in a position where they can no longer support themselves for a short period of time, this could be called a recession or anything else, I believe the government should step in, provide assistance. And I think that from the recent stimulus bill, where it is shown to almost cut child poverty literally in half. That's one bill. Like this, it shows that I think a codified, unified, consistent effort to tackle poverty, combined with investment to build on top of welfare. Welfare alone will never be enough. Welfare is supposed to be a means to an end. It's something that's supposed to support somebody to the eventuality of success, financial success later down. There will always be people who are forever on welfare due to unfortunate circumstances. But the majority of people on welfare, the goal is to get them off welfare, not by kicking them off, but by helping them off. The problem is, I think many of the modern strategies of tackling welfare has been kicking them off. Like the Trump administration, when they kicked hundreds of thousands of people off of food stamps. That is not a war on poverty. That's a war on the poor.
Right. So specifically, what I want to do is not completely eliminate the welfare system. I do think that there should be some net for the people who are fallen. The problem with the welfare system right now is you get 22% of people who actually make it out of welfare. Those people actually don't do good oftentimes because you're just stripped of all government assistance. And then you have the majority of people who perpetually stay in welfare.
Wait,
and
let me ask you a question.
On the government.
Let me ask you a question. When you say welfare, that covers a large section of social programs. And so when you say 22% of people stay on it, that translates in a lot of different ways. Because let's say that I go into abstract poverty, right? And I have to rely on
I'm specifically talking about food stamps.
You're specifically talking about food stamps.
Talking about food stamps.
Specifically talking about food stamps. Okay, you said 22% welfare. That could mean a lot of different things. So
yeah, my bad. What I want to elaborate is, even though presidents, usually when the president comes in, the next president rolls back some of their things. There's actually been, and I can send you this data, 50 years of earned income tax credit, food stamps, specifically going up for the past 50 years. And with that uppance has been an increase of single parents. And like it wasn't like the next president rolled back, because if you see the graph, it's a straight line, a straight diagonal line. It's not an up, down. It's just straight diagonal line, straight up. Let me send you this one. They get data from the Census Bureau. It's just a linear correlation. They outline two causative factors of the more you increase that welfare sector, the more single parent poverty or the more single parents you create. This is specifically because The welfare programs uh, isolate single parenthood and penalize marriage.
Okay. So, as far as I'm aware, a lot of welfare programs penalize quote unquote marriage or penalize two parent households because there's two separate incomes that could be available for a household in comparison to one,
Right. And they
which
feel like
makes
you need
sense.
to help the single. Well, they feel like you need to
Let
help
me
the
let me
single parent.
well, if there's two people that could possibly be breadwinners, then in comparison to one, the amount of resources going to be available to one in comparison to two going to be different. I mean, that makes sense. Like, if, for example, if we gave the same amount of money to each individual, let's say it was just $750 across the board to every person, right? It was $750 to Billy and Mary, who are married to each other. So that's $750 for Billy, $750 for Mary. And then there's John, who's a single father. And you give it $750 to John. That means Billy and Mary, as a combined income,
Well,
got double.
I get what you're saying, and it does make sense. And I do agree with the thesis that single parents need more money. But when you look at the outcomes, it doesn't show positive outcomes. For example, if you're running a race and someone like runs into a fence and they break their leg, or it doesn't have to be their fault. Somehow they break their leg, and then you give them like a robot leg because that guy needs more help than the other people, even though you adequately given help, the other people are just going to break their leg too. You're going to create more people. You're going to create a society where it's okay to break your leg because they're going to help you more.
Can I send you something?
Go ahead.
I sent you something. Don't worry, it's not a very long thing you're gonna have to read here. There's a PDF if you want to download it, but it has the abstract right there, so I'm gonna read it very quickly. Is the social safety net a long-term investment? Large-scale evidence from the food stamps program. We use novel large-scale data of 43 million Americans, so it's not a small sample size, from the 2000 census and the 2001 to the 2013 American Community Survey, linked to the Social Security Administration to study how a policy-driven increase in economic resources for families affects children's long-term outcomes. Using variation from the country's level rollout of the food stamp program between 1961 and 1975, we find that children with access to greater economic resources between the age of 5 experience an increase of 6% of a standard deviation in their adult human capital, 3% of a standard deviation in their adult economic self-sufficiency, and an 8% of standard deviation in the quality of their adult neighborhoods, 0.4% point increase in longevity, and 0.5% point decrease in likelihood of being incarcerated. Based on these estimates, we conclude that food stamps transfer of resources to families is a highly cost-effective investment into young children, yielding a marginal value of public funds of approximately 56. Now, I do acknowledge that when it comes to yes, what?
So I want you to finish the statement, but I do have a couple of things that I want to know. But I'll let you finish.
Yeah, I do acknowledge that single-family homes have gone up, but this is true across the entirety of the developed world, as far as I'm aware. Am I incorrect in asserting that this is also true in Europe?
I don't think so.
It's not.
I haven't seen any data of it.
It's not.
Could be right. Could be wrong.
Check. Can somebody check me on the? Obviously, there's more people in chat than there is here. Can somebody check if that's the case? Just a quick thing. I can just Google it.
Yeah.
Single.
I would have
family households, because this would be really quick if we find out that Europe also is having an increase of single family households, but also has a higher quality of life while depending on the social programs, and that's a pretty easy, like, well, there you go.
Well, there would be three things. One, the source I sent you outlined a causative link. Two, you would have to prove that the increase of single parent is equivalent from the EU to America. And three, you would have to outline why. Like, maybe it is the case that like welfare programs increase single parent households, and it is a case that they're living well. But it could be the case that they would be living better if the welfare was gone.
It'd be better if the welfare was gone. Somebody, you sent me a link, but then the link doesn't. One second, see if it does work actually. Scandinavia and Germany have the highest proportion of single households. In these countries, more than 4 in 10 of all households are single households. Mediterranean Eastern European countries have
Right.
the lowest proportion of single households. By the way, these countries, on average, have a lower standard of living, with only about a quarter of their population falling into the group. However, the rise of single households have been increasing most rapidly in many East European countries. So the thing is,
That doesn't.
what,
Yeah, that doesn't say what you think it is. I mean,
let me,
there is a single household
okay,
rate, but it's not correlative to anything. And it just says like
you didn't,
this is the highest single household rate. Go ahead if you had
okay.
something to add.
So what I want to ask you about single family households is, first you need to show me that, of course, that we know that the reason why we have an increase of single family households is because of the social programs, and that the increase of these single family households in comparison to the social programs are worth ditching these social programs in favor of whatever we're going to do to encourage marriage. Because if your policy is we should encourage marriage or make it like incentivize marriage or something like that, I don't really care. I just think we shouldn't get rid of these social programs which are keeping children out of poverty and very obviously helping them when it comes to their resources and their chances of success.
I totally agree. We shouldn't get rid of it. That's why I advocate for divestment. I think we should divest a large amount. We currently spend $1 trillion every year. I think we should.
By the way,
divest
between
that
2010 and 2020, the number of single person households increased by 20% in the European Union.
Yeah, but you would have to outline why. But specifically, what I was going to say is that we have welfare. The job of welfare is to get off of welfare and to reduce government dependence and to reduce poverty.
Uh-huh.
In the 50 years that we had these big welfare systems, it didn't decrease poverty. And second, it didn't get people off the government. It made people more government dependent.
Okay.
And then there
Again,
are other alternatives that are better for reducing poverty, like the criminal justice system, and like reducing the criminal justice system and the two-parent households. The single-parent households is a single lead indicator for crime and poverty. So it seems like an easy place to start if we want to end poverty.
okay, so we can help do criminal justice reform. We can release all non-violent drug offenders. We can end the drug war. We can get rid of private prisons. There's a lot of things we can do. I would agree with you on all these things. But we know that giving these access to youth increases their chances of succeeding to life, giving them these resources at a young age. So if the idea is we're going to do this to decrease poverty in youth, then these programs on their own, I don't think is the only solution. They're meant as to be a net. While they do help with later development, it's supposed to be something that keeps you up, and then we give them a hand up, whether through large infrastructure bills, something to get them to work. Again, what are you alleging that that it has had? Like, what's your allegation here exactly?
So my point is that one, welfare does not reduce poverty. Two, there are better methods of reducing poverty and making people's lives better via criminal justice, via making sure people have two-parent households.
Okay.
I don't think, to be clear, and I know you get this, but like I don't want to get rid of the welfare system. I just want to divest a large fund of sums to what I feel like are better.
You want to take money away from this.
Yep.
When it's not getting enough.
I think
the thing is, you're talking about the war on poverty like it was this like consistent thing. Like, we've dumped all this money for all these years and it didn't work. Fuck it, throw it out the window. But the war on poverty has been a poorly funded, poorly executed war, not because, well, it's just like these like crazy socialists just dumping money into a pot, but because you're going through different administrations that have completely different perspectives on how you're supposed to tackle poverty. When you have one administration just kicking people off of food stamps, hundreds of thousands of people who need that stuff to get by. I think it was 600,000 people that the Trump administration tried to kick off food stamps. Like, that is a very different approach to the approach of Lyndon B. Johnson. And to try to include those years in the war on poverty while they're actively trying to shove people off the programs, that's my first issue with this framing. The second issue I have with this framing
Yeah.
is the idea that I feel like you're kind of like ignoring the fact that these programs do increase the chances of these people succeeding later in life. Now, it could be true that alone this isn't enough to get people out of poverty, but that was never the purpose of like these safety net programs like food stamps. Food stamps isn't meant to be something that like, hey, we give this to you and now you're in college, right? It's supposed to be something that keeps you above water so then we can transfer you to other things, because you can't study in school if you can't eat. That is a very basic principle. If you cannot eat, and I believe it's like 1 in 5 American children are suffering from like food scarcity. I'd have to go back and check that statistic. But if you cannot eat, if you're not eating well, that's going to hurt your educational outcomes. And so it is one building block on top of many other building blocks. And I feel that the government not only didn't properly, through those 50 years, even support that one building block, but it didn't continue what was needed. The Great Society of Lyndon B. Johnson was not something that was if you look at all the proposals he put forward, there was tons of them that were completely ignored and pushed aside that today would be seen as far left proposals. And they were proposed during his term after JFK was shot. So I don't know how you're saying that this is all like maybe the fault of welfare when you acknowledge like, hey, it could be, for example, the drug war, or could be how our criminal justice system is completely whack, or possibly this 2-parent household thing you're talking about. But this was a committed support for welfare, and we didn't build the other building blocks that were necessary to transfer people out of poverty. It was 1 in 7. Thank you.
Here's what I want to say. Yeah, here's what I want to say. So you bring up the point that they increase success rate for children, which could be true, but two things. One, the job of welfare is to get people off government independence and get people less in poverty, which it did not do. And two, it could be the case
it wasn't
that they
properly supported and they didn't do the rest of the plan.
Well, it could be the case that it does increase child success, but I would counter by saying it could also be the case that child success would be even greater if you did my approach. The second thing you said was it wasn't 50 straight years, and Lyndon B. Johnson didn't get his like the Great Society that he wanted. But what I have to say is that that's like every president. Trump didn't really get his wall. I mean, Obama didn't get the Medicare for all that he wants. Like, I mean, that's just like government.
But wait, that's how you sold it though. But the thing is, let's say that we had, but you sold it like it was this 50-year quest of just pouring money down a chute. That wasn't the case. You can't tell me that. Are you gonna really tell me that Donald Trump continued the legacy of the war on poverty? Because you're gonna tell me that he continued that legacy because you're concluding him in the 50 years. What about Bush, Ronald Reagan?
What? Wait, this is to firstly, this stops at 2014. Secondly, I have no idea.
Reagan and Bush.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean,
so why'd you say 50 years?
Wait, no. Let me finish. You're a boomer, so you might know more about Ronald Reagan than I do. But there's like a correlative chart in the increase in these 50 years of these specific sectors in the increase of single parent poverty. What I said was 50 years after the war on poverty, not 50 years of the war on poverty. And if I did say of, I take it back. It's 50 years after the war on poverty. And you can look at this on the side chart of the evidence I sent you. It's specifically the war on poverty 50 years after. That's what it specifically cites. It ends in September 2014. So what I want to ask you is let's frame this debate a little bit differently. How much money, just ballpark, how much money do you think would have been enough to specifically do the war on poverty right?
No, that's not a question you can ask. Okay, let me ask you a question. How much money to win the Second World War?
Huh?
Like, I don't know. I don't have no frame of. What do you mean? How much money? The ballpark.
Yeah, how much money do you think would be enough? Well, because here's my problem, and I'll be honest with you. Is like it seems like if we had a robust system and we put in an adequate amount of money, the lefties would just be like, well, that's not enough. and they'll keep saying that that's not enough until, I don't know, like you can just infinitely say that's not enough. So I want to get your estimate, and I hope you can see where I'm going from. I want to get your estimate on like how much do you think was enough for you to say, all right, this is not as good as these other alternatives.
Okay, so the first thing is the war on poverty, the actual like dumping money into welfare programs in its of itself, the welfare programs were being talked about, specifically that part, not just the war on poverty, but the welfare part, which is the specific thing we're talking about. It is not made under the auspices of we're giving food stamps, the food stamps will get them out of poverty, or that is the tool that is used to get them out of poverty. Welfare is supposed to like be used as a tool to make the what?
Yeah. Well, did you say? Well, I mean that specifically was the statement. It was two things. Like one, to get them out of government dependence, and two, to make them less poor. Are you denying any of these two things?
Why the fuck did you ask me? Okay, I need to calm down. I'm gonna finish my statement.
Yeah, I'm out of the surgery. Keep going.
The purpose of welfare is to make the worst aspects of poverty livable. Because, like, for example, a child starving will not be able to get an education. It is not to drag them all out of poverty, even if it has been shown time and time again that if you do have access to more resources in your youth, you are more likely to succeed. So it is the job of welfare to keep people above water, but that's not going to get them on the ship. You need a buoy to do that. You're going to need jobs programs, you're going to need educational grants, you're going to need a lot more than just that. So you're looking at the war as welfare as this is the tool that Democrats use to pull people out of poverty permanently. That was never really the idea. The idea wasn't we are doing this because we think if we give you $5 or this much money for food, then now your kid's gonna be able to go to college. It does increase their ability to succeed when it comes to the odds of it, but that was never the purpose. It was to alleviate the suffering. So I don't know why you're asking this question in particular. Like, for example, the welfare programs and what was it? The welfare programs, and I believe it was Indonesia. After 7 years of it being done, it didn't reduce poverty. That wasn't the purpose of that welfare program. Do you know what it did do? It reduced the chances of youth to stunt in their growth.
Right. So are you saying that, the aims of welfare is to like relieve the symptoms of poverty?
Yeah, in large part.
Yeah. So Lyndon B. Johnson specifically stated, and I'll give you the quote here.
Okay, let me be clear. Welfare versus war on poverty. Let's be clear. These are two separate things. Continue.
Right. Our aim is not to relieve the symptom of poverty, but to cure it, and above all, prevent it.
Yes.
And I think welfare was a part of this.
Yes.
You're the one who read 4 dictionaries on it, so you might be right that he made the distinction between, you might be right. But let's frame it in this way.
There's a difference between, Lyndon B. Johnson was never under the idea that if you just give a kid a sandwich, he's going to become a nuclear physicist. He was under the idea that you're supposed to relieve the worst symptoms of poverty, then give them a hand up. The war on poverty was not simply food stamps. You got to look at the grand society, this picture he was painting that was never fully seen of how welfare was just one aspect of it. It wasn't supposed to be seen as a cure for poverty. And that's why a lot of people see it as a leeching program. But the thing is, it's not meant to be a permanent solution. It is meant to be something there that's a cushion for you to recover. It's like, for example, if you are injured and shot and hurt and you're put in a hospital and they put pillows under you, those pillows aren't meant to cure you or meant to do surgery on you, aren't meant to bring you into a position where you can get back and out into the world. They are meant to make it as comfortable as physically possible until you are back out into the world. The surgery is supposed to fix that. We never did the surgery. We never did the economic restructuring of the economy that was supposed to come with it. Just like I said with Indonesia, what the investments when it came to welfare it didn't decrease poverty. What it did, though, is decrease stunting of growth, which is extremely important when it comes to the health of these children. So again, the war on poverty and welfare, the war on poverty was never fully set into practice. It wasn't consistent, and the grand society was never completely fulfilled. In comparison to welfare, which did get distributed, but was never meant to be the thing that bring people like out of poverty on its own. Nobody was under the auspices. If you give somebody a chicken sandwich, it won't be poor now.
Right.
I mean, this was LBJ was a Christian. He understood like the idea, like give somebody a fish, right? They eat for a day. Teach somebody fish, they eat for a lifetime. He understood that principle.
So yeah, that's exactly my point. Welfare is not to raise people out of poverty. It's to cure the or make the poverty a little less stricken. And that's why my prescription isn't to get rid of welfare. It's just to, I don't think you need $1 trillion to make wealth or poverty a little less painful. I think we should actually be more focusing on decreasing poverty, because it's been shown, even though you do say welfare increases the rate of childhood success, it's been the lead indicator of that childhood success comes from a 2-parent household. So even in that metric, my prescriptions.
So yes, if you again, I have not pushed against your idea of 2-parent households, right? If you have 2 incomes or 2 people in a home raising a child, more figures in the home, like that can help a child, right? I'm not against that. But I'm against gutting welfare. So you can stop bringing it up because I already agreed with you. I've already if your point was to convince me or to like sell me on that, congratulations. Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Here's the thing. It's a debate of importance. When we have limited federal resources, I think a 2-parent structure, the solutions I advocate for, are more important than welfare. Do you agree with this?
Do I believe that 2-parent households are more important than welfare?
Well, not just 2-parent households. The reform of criminal justice system, to fix 2-parent
all of these
households,
things together versus one program. So reform of criminal justice system combined with 2-parent households, combined with all these other proposals you have, versus welfare alone. Do you not see how that's tilting the scale a little bit?
Well, right now the federal government, and it's only fair, and I
that would be like me asking,
saying,
like,
right? It's not
well,
fair.
for war we need what's more important, tanks or guns, grenades, bullets, and airplanes?
Yeah.
Well, when you stack it like that.
Yeah, I get it, but here's why I say, and here's why I think it's a fair comparison. It's because we spend more on welfare than we do on unions. We spend more on welfare than we do on.
What? What do you mean we spend more on welfare than unions? What do you mean by that? The government doesn't. So you mean like? What do you mean by unions?
Right. So
like that's what?
One of my prescriptions is for the government to.
How do we spend on unions? How does that happen?
Yeah. So
we don't taxes. We don't pay taxes into unions. We pay union dues.
I'm trying to answer. So one of my specific prescriptions, and which I've talked to many people about, is specifically funding unions. The government should publicly fund unions. Right now, they don't do. They do this in other countries. They don't do it as much in America, and I want to see this. So some specific problems is much harder to fund a private union than it is a public union. But like the answer to that is not all public unions are funded. The police are funded. They have pretty big unions. It just proves that it works. So why don't we fund more why don't we fund more unions? I mean, we already have a test case. That's why I say the funding of unions. But specifically going back to my point, I think it's a fair comparison because the United States right now spends more on welfare than it does on unions. It spends more on welfare than it does on the criminal justice or reforming the criminal justice system. It spends more on welfare than anything I've outlisted combined.
You know what? I could. If you're saying we should do this thing we don't do, then I could say we spend more on like stop signs than we spend on like unions. But okay, so the problem is all of what you're talking about is about reducing poverty, right? The unions, and I agree that unions, strong unions in the United States, reduces poverty and increases the pay of workers and the benefit of workers. I agree with you on that. We would probably maybe agree on some like tax credits for children, maybe agree on any of these programs. The problem is that while these programs are going on, people are going to still be needing these welfare programs. You want to know what the solution would be? As people go out of poverty, then the amount we are spending on welfare would naturally go down. So wouldn't the solution then, if all these things you're saying work, is to not just start gutting welfare right now and make the suffering of those who are living in poverty right now due to the failures of our government suffer more and decrease their chances of success? Why don't we keep that, work on these other programs that can pull people out of poverty, so then it will naturally decrease as less people are using food stamps, because now they're able to use unions or the magical two-parent household or these child tax credits to benefit themselves. Universal health care, daycare.
Yeah, let me think about that.
Because then it would naturally go down. Like if less people need welfare because we're reducing poverty through these unions, or reducing poverty through the two-parent household, or reducing poverty through any of these programs, then the amount of people needing food stamps would just naturally go down.
Here's what I think. I do think that's a good solution, to have the divestment of welfare be predicated on the poverty line. That's a good solution. Specifically, what I am questioning is, where do we get the initial money to jumpstart things like the socially encouraging two-parent household structures? Where do you think we get the money from if it's not these systems?
Well, personally, we had money to bail out the big banks. We had money to go to war in Iraq. We had money to go to war in Afghanistan. We had money for the stimulus, even though we were told we didn't have money for it. We're going to have money for the infrastructure plan. We're going to have all this money. And inflation is not skyrocketing crazy with these big proposals. That's what we were told. That was a scare, that if we sent out these checks, inflation was going to go through the roof. And certainly, when it comes to income inequality and the amount our taxes have gone down relative to our eras of success in the past, I do think that if we increase the taxes on some of the more wealthier in society, and I would even say, and I'm being honest here, across the board, that everybody's going to have to pay a little bit of a fair share. But as far as I'm aware, most Americans, when told that there would be an increase of taxes, but everybody would be covered by things like healthcare, they support it. So I would get money through a stimulus or a large-scale plan like we had with the stimulus or infrastructure. For example, the stimulus bill, which I could see a stimulus being part of a actual war on poverty, a continue a grand society, that cut childhood poverty in half in one fell swoop. It is dependent on us to follow up that effort. It was 48% specifically, if anybody wanted to nitpick. So
Right.
I think we have the resources. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And there's countries that are spending more on these programs that we're talking about right now, that have better childhood outcomes and better outcomes for low-income people and better standards of living and higher, what's not fatality rates, but they live longer. I forget exactly what the term is. So obviously, I think there is money for these programs.
Life expectancy?
I will quote Tony Benn: if we have money to kill people, I think we have money to help people. Morality rates. There we go.
Okay. So a couple of things there. So specifically on the taxes, my question is, why does everything have to come in the forms of, oh, we got to up the tax. Oh, we got to up the tax. Why is that always the number one solution lefties go to when they need anything funded?
Because that's how you fund things.
I mean,
get
you
money
can
from the people.
divest,
You
can-
take money. Well, the thing is, my question to you would be, where would we divest? And your thing is welfare,
welfare.
right? Which would mean that while you're trying to pull people out of poverty, you're actively making them feel worse and in a worse situation before. Meaning those good outcomes I talked about earlier that come from welfare when it comes to like like nourishment of the child. Like if a child is not eating properly, they will not be able to study in school properly. If they're feeling hunger pains, there's no way in hell they're going to be able to pay attention to math class. Those things are going to be worsened, and you're going to actively undermine your effort. And then 50 years from now, your child, cut sleeves, will be on a different future stream saying that the second war on poverty failed. And then they'll point to and they'll say, look, we need to disincentivize from all these things of these programs about two-parent households and these programs about funding all these unions because it failed.
Well, here's the thing. I agree with the prescriptions, and the increase in tax. I'll have to do more research.
How about we stop subsidizing oil and gas companies and large corporations? I mean, of course, certain corporations, they do serve public interests. I would say, like, for example, farming is a great example of that. But there's a lot of them, which I'd be perfectly comfortable stop subsidizing.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't the U.S. government just start extracting oil from Canada, because we get 50% of our oil from there, and then just be more dependent on Saudi Arabia? Like, I mean, if we stop getting oil from here, we're just going to get more from Canada, right?
You do know we're self-sufficient.
Is that, I thought we got 50% of our oil from. Well, we're not going to be self-sufficient.
Okay, let me be very clear. The oil and gas companies are going to be fine. They are going to be fine. They're not going to go under. The problem when it comes to the modern energy sector isn't the idea that they're going to go under. It's the problem when you talk about Saudi Arabia is the idea that they have extreme control over oil and gas prices. And that if they were to get into another price war with Russia, for example, like a few years ago, if that price war was to happen again, that could hurt the American oil and gas industry. That would be something I would point to.
Well,
we're a net positive producer for oil and gas.
Right, but that's only because of the funds. Well, my question to you is how much of it has to do with funds, and how much of it does it have to do with the markets that they create on itself? When I say the funds, I mean the funds from the government. How much does that have to do with?
I'm going to be honest. I'm not. Can we? I don't want to get stuck up specifically on oil and gas because that was just a random any. It could have been a standard for any corporate welfare. I'm not an expert on oil and gas. I don't want to pretend to be.
Yeah,
but it could have been a standard for any corporate welfare, just general.
As soon as I hear another country other than America, I just instantly turn to the foreign policy guy.
Well, you brought up the other country besides America, not me.
All right, fair point. But what I want to say is, okay, I agree with your 90% of your prescriptions. Increased taxes and the divestment of welfare should be predicated on the poverty line. And if the poverty line goes lower welfare, right? Here's what I want to say. I think that right now some aspects of welfare are negative on its own. Not all aspects of welfare is just helping that one special kid who if he didn't get this welfare, he'd literally die of starvation, right? Some of these welfares are actively harmful, right? Because some of these welfares encourage unemployment, because at some points of the benefits, you actually get more money being unemployed or making less money than you do making more money and working harder. And I feel like those sectors we can define pretty safely.
Or why don't we make it like a scaling system where, example, you go out and, for example, let's say that there's this idea that if you get above this amount of money working, right, then you just get cut off, right? It's the steep cutoff. You know what I mean? What I'm talking about, if I make more than this amount, then they cut me off. So I would hate to be cut off, so I won't do that. I know people who have dealt with that before. So we'll make it a sliding scale, not a cutoff. Boom, solved.
So here's the problem. Some aspects of welfare are already a sliding scale.
Yes, some aspects. But the problem you just talked about has to do with a cutoff.
No, it doesn't. It has to do with the arbitrariness of the sliding scale, right? So some parts of the sliding scale, it's more beneficial to just straight up be unemployed than it is to have a job and have some welfare. Even though it is a sliding scale, at some points, it's not a direct sliding scale. It's not a smooth downward decline. It's like I can just show you the graph.
If you want to, but again, the purpose of welfare is not to destroy poverty. Let me just make that clear.
I know, but it does like it. What I'm saying is it's actively harmful because it encourages unemployment. I hope. Yes. Okay. Wait. Okay, that's based. Okay, here we go. There you go. So specifically, it would be just to take a few examples. Just looking at this graph, it's better to earn like it's worse to earn $29,000 under this system than it is to earn something like $25,000 because it's not a smooth transition. If you click on the link and you go to the figure 1B graph, specifically talking about who guessed single parent households, you can specifically see the graph. And at some aspects, it's better to be more poor so you can get more welfare than it is to actually, get some of the system's benefits. 1B, yes. You see the graph? It says like if you're unemployed, you get $30,000, right? Like I mean, you're smart. You see the graph for yourself. It's uneven. At some points, you get more money for working less.
Okay, housing voucher, Section 8, Medicaid, SNAP, earned income tax credit. Wait, what are you complaining about? You're complaining about the $30,000 to drop there, and so it would be better to like.
Well, yeah, there's a drop. So
yeah, make that sliding. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like,
I'm trying. That's what I've been saying for the last 5 minutes.
Well, you said make it a sliding scale.
Yes,
and I'm like,
that's a drop.
A sliding scale. I thought you meant when you said drop, just like a hard line cutoff. My bad. But yeah,
when I meant a drop is that what happens with people is that they'll be like, if they get this job, then that means they're going to lose $10,000, maybe like $2,000 worth of like welfare programs, but they're only going to make $1,000 worth of money. And so what you should do is make it so it's reduced at a slower rate comparative to income. Just like how if you make more income, it's like it's a progressive tax system. It's not a like when you make this, then you lose half all your money, because if it did, then that would disincentivize people from working. But since it's a progressive tax system, you still get more money if you earn more money. If it was like you just lose half your money at this rate, then it might actually be not worth it. So it'd be like the reversal in this way, where it would be a sliding scale downward.
Right. Okay. I mean,
and the biggest drop here seems to be specifically from Medicaid and maybe the housing voucher. So again, this would partially be addressed by this larger program we're talking about right now. If we were to make a healthcare program, whether it be a public option or Medicare for all or something else, whatever it would be, but healthcare in the United States is crookedly backward. So like this thing you're talking about could help.
Yeah,
deal with this as well.
Here's what I think about Medicare, because you offer some solutions, and I think some of them are based, some of them are cringe. Here's what I think about Medicare. I think Medicare is a terrible idea, other than all of the other ideas, right? When leftists over here preach about like defunding all the riches to fund this Medicare that won't even keep its same system for like 3 years.
I didn't say Medicare to start a debate about Medicare for all. I said public option Medicare for all, any healthcare program, like anything that's better than the current state.
Well, all of them are the same, right? It's like
public option is not the same as Medicare for all. Public option keeps private healthcare options. It makes a public option that would compete with private options, making the private options, no matter what, have to go down. That would mean those private options have to compete at more competitive rates, decreasing the cost for all Americans, putting more money in their pocket. That more money that's spent on the market, consumerism, baby, boom. The more money's flowing through the system. Well, that is not the same as Medicare for all, which bans private insurance. That is not the same thing. Medicare for
Yeah,
all.
but here's
What?
what I
Oh, okay, what?
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I know what you're talking about, right? It's not like I'm not clueless on this. Pete Buttigieg like advocated for the same thing of like keeping the privatization while implementing a system like you're talking about. The problem with that
Yeah,
is
that's not
like
Medicare for
wasn't
all though.
the
Medicare for all. If you don't ban private insurance, it's not Medicare for all.
when I said it was the same, what I was specifically talking about are the mechanisms on how it's funded. It's all the same.
Yeah, but the amount of
That's the
cost
part that matters.
is the amount of cost is different, and the effects on the economy is also different. The effects of public option is going to be different than the effects of Medicare for all.
And
Like, do you not think that
so
making these private companies compete with lower prices because they have to if they want to stay competitive because of public option is going to have the same economic effects as Medicare for all?
here's my question to you. Can you
Wait, you
can,
didn't wait. You can't ask me a question if
Wait.
you don't answer my question.
Well, I'm going to answer a question if
You're going to
make
answer
this
my question
clarifying.
with a question. Okay.
Well, because there's different sectors, even in a two-payer system, which is of the lines you're advocating for, there are different sectors of it. Could rich people privately pay for their own business, or privately pay for their own health insurance?
Why would under public option? Yes. Under Medicare for all,
so here's
no.
the thing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Here's the thing, because some people don't advocate for that. Here's what's going to happen.
I mean,
All the private
actually,
people-
technically, I think for maybe like elective surgeries, maybe like I guess possibly, but it would depend. It depends on the specific.
Here's the thing that was going to happen, right? Here's what, just like
By the way, you didn't answer my thing.
I know. I'm going to say, yeah, I'm literally going to answer. Here's what I think is going to happen. All the rich people are going to fund their own private sector, which means you don't have enough money to implement the public option, which means you're going to raise even more taxes on the industry.
You are aware that they will have to pay taxes for the public option no matter what, right? No, they do have to pay for the public option, whether they buy a private option or not. They do have to do that. They're going to pay through taxes.
Would they pay as much as would they pay as much as they would in like a Medicare sense? Like, would they pay as much?
No, they would not be paying the same, no. But
okay,
why we would just
that excess?
I'm not saying that this isn't going to cost money through taxes. It's obviously going to. I never made that allegation.
And here's what I'm going to say. The excess money that private people don't pay for Medicare is going to go to the private insurance, making the private insurance.
You never answered my question.
I'm trying to clarify.
What was my question?
Oh, okay. My bad.
Do you even remember what my question was?
Like, I was just trying to get clarification.
Can you please tell me what my question was? Do you even remember my question?
Can you ask your question?
No, wait. You were saying you were getting to it the whole time. I'd like to hear you repeat my question back to me. You said you were getting to it through the whole thing. I listened to the whole spiel and I answered multiple questions for you. I would like you to repeat what my question was. I would like to hear that. I would like to hear that you were listening and you were not just dragging my ass around and being disingenuous.
Well, I wasn't gonna. To be frank with you, I wasn't gonna. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want you to. You just don't remember, and you were dragging me around and being disingenuous.
Please tell me what my question was. If you remember it, tell me what the question was.
Dylan, I'm not like to take notes. Well, I do take notes, but if I don't take notes,
why were you saying that you were gonna? Okay, why were you doing that then? Why were you dragging me around? I'm gonna answer your question. Let me ask you a question. No, it's getting to the point. You never did.
Dylan, I was gonna let me finish the point. To be honest with you, I was going to clarify the problems in your definitions of two-payer system, and then I was going to ask you the question again because, like, I didn't write down your question. I was going to be like, okay, what was your question so I can answer? Because, like,
so you were being disingenuous. Okay.
What do you mean? I was going to answer.
You were telling me you said you were getting to it, but you don't even remember what my question was. So you obviously weren't getting to it.
I was just going to ask you the question to repeat your question. Why is that a bad thing? Like,
it's bad because you were saying you were trying to get to my question and that this was all meant to answer my question, and you don't even know what my question was. So how could it be all to answer my question when you don't even know what the question was?
Dylan, I take the L. I don't care. Just ask your question again. I take the L. Just ask your question again.
The question was that you do acknowledge that a Medicare for all system and a public option is going to have drastically different effects on the economy when it comes to cost and how the economy responds to it. So lumping them in as the same economic effects would be ridiculous.
Here is why, even though I could agree with that
It's a
statement,
blatant
I
yes.
still think that, look, I mean,
One of
if
them
I ask you,
abolishes private healthcare altogether. The other doesn't. That is going to have
wait,
two drastic different effects on the economy. That is an unobjectable just yes. That wasn't like a question where you're supposed to
wait,
be like, let me think about it. That's like a
Dylan,
duh. That's like asking you if the sky's blue.
Dylan, what do you think my first part of the answer was?
You were just starting off with like, well, like I
No,
might be able to
no,
agree with
that
it.
wasn't my first part. Oh, wait, clip it. My first part was, even though I'm going to say yes to this question, or something along the lines of that, even though I'm going to say yes to this question, I think both have their tremendous flaws. That's why I lumped them together as like bad ideas. Like, you just clip the first part of the question. But like specifically on this Medicare situation, your point was that you should have a healthcare system, a different healthcare system, so it can smooth out the edges of this rigged draft. My question to you is like, how would that work? Like,
Well, if
what's
we
your
have a public option, it's going to make private. We'll just start with the public option. Public option's much simpler, and it's the less extreme version, I guess, for all the conservatives out there. So we'll start with that one. The public option would make it so that not only would there be a public option, which is going to be subsidized for the government, therefore going to be able to compete very competitively when it comes to its price and the services it provides. But then the private companies are going to have to compete against that public option, lowering their costs and having to reduce overhead, meaning that people are going to be paying lower rates, and these private companies are hopefully going to have to basically provide better coverage, because if they don't, people just jump on the public option.
right? And
So
then
that means not only does this
retread.
help the people on the public option, it helps those on the private option as well. It makes the prices lower, and it made it that people who can't afford, used to not be able to afford private insurance, now could, and people could jump, of course, on the public option.
Yeah, can I answer that?
What do you mean answer that? That wasn't a question.
Well, can I respond to that?
Sure.
Say is that just like in schooling,
Yeah, that
private
was
people are going to invest in their own private funds, which imbalances the private versus the public market. Private is going to be way better than the public market. And then what's going to happen is that all the best healthcare resources goes to the private industry, making it not competitive at all. All the public care is just going to be crap. This is just what happens in schools too. I mean, it's simple, and you
yeah.
can't
That's why
call
you
that
properly fund the public option. That's why the public option would be different for the fact that it has access to tax dollars. That's what makes it competitive and provided better care. That would be an issue of funding, not an issue of the model.
right.
A defunded
But the
Republican
funding,
public option would be god awful. I would think one that was properly funded would actually be, I think, pretty decent. Maybe one designed by LBJ.
um, I feel like LBJ was more of the Medicare for all type.
Yeah,
Um,
but we're
but
starting on the moderate stuff, and plus, let's eventually get back to welfare.
well, no, this is all trying to smooth out the slide for welfare, and why while I don't disagree with you at all about the healthcare thing, because to be frank with you, I have to invest in more research of the two-party option. I just had some elementary questions, which is like, it's going to be unbalanced, right? I mean, private care is going to be way better than public care, even if
Well,
it
yes.
is well
The thing
suited.
is that now you're making an argument against inequality. That do you believe that we should abolish private insurance then?
Private insurance.
Yes,
Private insurance in what sector?
private insurance and healthcare.
Possibly. That would just be Medicare for all, right?
So you're in favor of Medicare for all?
I said possibly. I haven't done the research. And here's a problem that I was going
Why
to
we even then? Why are we
elucidate.
even talking about it? Let's just talk about it at a different time then.
Well, I
Let's
was
just wait for you
asking
to
you.
do research and come back. We'll talk about it then.
Well, I want to hear your answers to some preliminary questions, like why 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 do you reject that as a possibility for conversation?
I I mean, you messaged me that you wanted to debate on welfare specifically. I didn't know we would. Number one,
Okay,
we're going to be talking
okay.
about
So
healthcare specifically,
okay,
and we're going to be getting into public option versus like private option versus Medicare for all,
yeah.
and
I mean,
usually in a
that's
debate, like it's not like a Q&A. But if you want to Q&A me about my knowledge that I was not prepared for this conversation for, I mean, I could do my best. I mean,
I mean,
I think I basically explained the public option model. I don't like what else would I need to explain about that? Because if your problem is the inequality, then you sound like a Medicare for all guy. Because if you wanted completely private insurance, which a lot of the Republican Party basically wants, then that inequality you're talking about would exist. There would just be tons of people not covered by healthcare, and there'd be the richest would get the best healthcare and best services, which is the problem with American healthcare. That seems to be the case. That's the problem with the modern American healthcare. And the private
yeah.
and the public option is supposed to
Well,
like basically reduce the effects of that by making one plan accessible to tax dollars so it can compete at a most competitive rate at a lower price. And then the Medicare for all is supposed to expand Medicare to cover everybody, which means there's no private option.
Yeah,
Everybody's
no,
on this.
Medicare for all is like simple. Everything, yeah, that makes more sense. But Dylan, I gotta nitpick you there. You gotta read the fine print. I never said that I would debate you. I specifically said, do you want to talk? But it's completely fair that you said like I didn't come here to prepare a discussion about healthcare. So specifically going back to the welfare point, say we grant you that that healthcare does smooth around the edges of this plan. I basically agree with most of what you're saying. But I still have to ask, do you like, I still have to ask, like, how do I want to phrase this question? It's improbable that we come here to have a discussion about this. And you're basically saying that you want to divest welfare to a point that correlates with poverty, right? That if that was your stance, then I don't think we disagree much on anything.
Sorry, 1 second. Can you say that one more time for me?
Yeah, I was incoherent. If your stance is that we should decrease welfare because it has these negative impacts and that other solutions are better, and we should decrease welfare through the rate of poverty that decreases, then I don't disagree with you much on that.
Well, then,
is that your
well,
stance?
my position is that as we tackle poverty through more effective means, then people will naturally go off of welfare programs as long as we like reform a few of these to be sliding scales, which is something I'm in favor of. Then we should see no problems because again, the purpose of it is not to make you like the next Bill Gates inventor boy. It is to reduce the effects of abstract poverty, whether it be nutritional effects, housing, etc. Because without these basic things, you can't succeed. Statistically, I'm sure you can find the random, like, very skinny, starving child who was able to like build a nuclear bomb in his basement, but that's very rare, statistically insignificant. So yeah, I would naturally think as we do these programs that get people out of poverty, that people would naturally go off of welfare.
Well, I don't, I guess minor distinction. I think the government should defund welfare. They should stop funding in welfare as the poverty line go up. I don't think people, just opt out of welfare because, what would happen is they take the rest of the fundings and they increase the benefits, which ruins the whole point. I specifically want a defundment that co-aligns with the poverty line because, as you said, the less people are poor, the less they need it. So, in that, do you disagree with anything at all?
Yeah, I disagree with all of that because the thing is, why would we be decreasing the amount of funds that go to the people that? Because the thing is, it isn't like what it is we just burn the rest of the money that isn't used, right? It is we fund welfare and then people take that money that is needed for them to survive. So as more people go up from welfare, the people still there who have yet to succeed due to the failure of the programs or due to transitional, like they go from one job to another job if they're laid off, recession, that's supposed to be there to catch them. And so you're going to see like welfare costs usually go up around times of recession because it's supposed to be a safety net to catch you, to save you from the bad effects. You won't need to decrease it. In fact, you should have it there so they can live a decent lifestyle. So it's going to be easy for them to adapt, and we make sure that these children are getting like full meals. You don't need to decrease the amount of money that is going to the individual, because overall there's going to be less people needing these welfare programs because less people in poverty. There would be no point in doing that.
I don't like the framing of just decreasing it. I want that excess money to go into other sectors that can literally decrease poverty. Like, why would we have this money to make, the person who needs this welfare? Why would we make their budget like $30,000 or like increase that to make everyone $30,000 when we can just decrease poverty with that money? I don't get that.
So what you're saying is that we have the kids starve now so they won't starve later.
No, you can have
that's what the effect of your plan would be. The idea that we have them starve now, take all that money, then throw it at hopefully successful job programs. If the jobs programs fail, then what we just did is have people starve for possibly your 50-year war on poverty for basically no effect. I mean, like, the thing is, at least if other government plans fail, they'd have something to fall back on. But if we take this money from here and then these government plans fail, then they have literally nothing to fall back upon. Not to mention, there's always, whether or not we tackle poverty completely, there's always going to be recessions and times when people lose jobs. So there's always going to need to be like a welfare cushion that lets people live to a certain level of comfort and livability.
Right. Wait, Dylan, do you think if we decrease welfare's budget from $1 trillion to $800 billion, kids just die? Because that's not what the data shows.
What do you mean kids just die? What do you mean by that?
Well, you said your characterization of my argument was I defund some parts of welfare, so I just let kids starve, which is obviously not my point if you've been listening. Do you think defunding of welfare makes more kids die?
Yes.
No, I would need some type of data proof.
Okay, 1 second. I got something for you. I'll bring it up on stream. So, this is a little complicated, so do your best to follow me. So there's this thing that we enter it here at the top, and people need this to function, and when they enter it up there, then it goes through these series of tubes that is necessary to fund the body and make it so it functions. And not only is it would you pass away if you don't have enough of this energy being put into you, but even if you have enough to survive, it could lower your educational outcomes, which could then push you maybe to gang violence, which could also kill you. Just like how poverty could kill people, maybe not directly, poor, bang, you're dead because you're poor, but it could push you to other ways that kill you.
Yeah, I get how starvation works, Dylan. Okay. I think you and me both have been on the edges of society at one point in time when it comes to poverty rates. You know what it feels like. I know what it feels like. But specifically, I need data on the fact that when you cut welfare policies or the welfare budget, people just starve to death. Say instead of that 30,000 number, we have on...
You're asking me for data that if people don't have funds for eat, whether it kills them.
Wait, no, it's not. No. So to be clear, we're not decreasing their funds. If they're literally on the brinks of society, we're not decreasing their funds and stripping them away to eat. That 30,000 number, you look, if people are unemployed, they get $30,000. So they only get $25,000. They don't just starve and die. You can live off $25,000.
So in this instance, okay, let's say we give them less food. So then the secondary thing I give them, let's say you give them half the sandwich, not the full sandwich. I guess that's the plan here. And then they eat half the sandwich.
Wait, $3,000 is more than a sandwich, and it's more than living conditions. And
you really 25. It depends on where you live exactly how much that money can get you and how you're budgeting and how many kids. It really $5,000. If you go from $30,000 to $5,000, that can affect whether you're
Wait,
living or like.
no, not $5,000. It's $30,000 to $25,000.
Yes, that is a $5,000
Right.
decrease in
Okay,
income. That
my
is
bad.
massive.
It sounded like you said you go from $30,000 to $5,000 income. But what I'm specifically gonna say is like, you don't starve. You're not starving to death off of 25K income. That's so like that's not
Okay.
true.
I was.
I don't.
Are you for real?
And you have to provide.
You do know
evidence
that $26,000 is the poverty threshold in the U.S. So you're talking about literally pushing people back into poverty.
Well, wait. Specifically, even if they're classified as poverty people don't. Well, wait. You're acting like I'm the one who has the overall net increase in poverty when I'm advocating to just reduce poverty with that money. Why don't we just take that money and reduce poverty rather than trying to?
I am advocating for that while not letting these people like starve.
No, Dylan, like you're advocating for putting pillows on someone after they took a bullet. I'm advocating for the body-proof armor that makes you not into poverty in the first place. I don't,
yeah, you know what? That's a great idea. This is the equivalent of what it is, actually. Let's make this analogy. So I just got shot, or I have cancer, or I have something that's going to need drastic action done to save my life, right? And somebody put pillows under me, and then we're supposed to be waiting for a doctor. Then the doctor gets the bright idea to sell the pillows so that hopefully 10 to 15 years down the line, there will be systematic solutions to these issues. Do you think that individual has the 10 to 15 years to wait?
Oh, my solution isn't long term, but no. He doesn't have the 10 to 15 years to wait.
So what do we do about that individual?
Take care of them to the best of the ability.
But you've reduced their ability to take care of themselves.
So if we like took away his pillow and then funded someone like an organ, and we use that pillow and somehow magically turned it into an organ to reduce that person from going on the hospital bed in the first place, I'd advocate for the latter solution.
But they're already there.
No, a different person. So like you're saying.
So what you're thinking about is taking. Okay, so in your world, we're taking food stamps, subsidies, and whatever is to keep these people who are
decreasing poverty.
Let me finish. We're taking this from the people who are currently in poverty to help other people down the line hopefully not get into poverty. That's the plan.
No, it would also have a direct benefit.
How?
Unions
do they have the time to wait?
Well, wait. Criminal justice has a direct benefit. If you don't go to jail, then that's directly saving your life. Like that's one of the most direct things ever.
So you're saying we release all the fathers, basically?
We don't release all the fathers. We implement reforms to the criminal justice systems.
That's not going to be an immediate impact, and you know it.
Yes, it is. Well, wait. If we don't put fathers there in the first place, that's an immediate impact.
You think that the effects that are going to be able to help people recover from losing that income? Wait, and not to mention the fact that's going to be another person in the house. That is going to be another mouth to feed.
Okay. And wait. It's proven that if you have two mouths to feed, you increase your income.
Yes.
Okay.
But you're cutting their income overall.
Here's what I'll say. Even if you don't want to take that
why is it that this is weird, because you're basically admitting that you were going to increase the immediate suffering of these people, right? But if you wanted to make just a hardcore bite the bullet
they're not poor by any means.
What?
They're not poor by any means. Okay, so if you earn $25,000 of income, you get $20,000 of welfare. That's $45,000. You don't need that much.
Wait, what do you mean? That's not what I'm. Oh my God. The 25,000 would be the top of your program. You do realize that. If we look at this, wait, I'm looking at the graph you gave me. At the top of this, at the 0, this is the top of the program. It's 20. It looks like it might possibly touch 30,000, right? It doesn't really actually reach it. It looks
Yeah,
like it's more at
that's
27. What you're talking about is cutting this, right? You're cutting this down, right? And you would also cut it down all scale if you were trying to reduce the overall cost. You wouldn't just be cutting it for the top percentage. So you'd be cutting it down. So for like, it would go to like 25 and this would go down to 20. It's not going to be, if you're talking about $20,000, that's not going to be $30,000 on top of it. It would be a reduced amount.
No, I'm saying if you make $20,000, according to the graph, you make around like $23,000 in welfare benefits. That's not poverty. That's not putting a pillow on someone's like bed. That's like going to like a rural person's house in their trailer and like adding a pillow. Like, I mean, $40,000 is nowhere near starving.
20,000. Well, number one, it kind of depends on where you live, but $20,000.
You get $40,000, right?
20,000. Wait, in your model or in this under the current model?
In this model, if you get $20,000, you get around $23,000 in welfare benefits. That's $43,000. We have more than enough to like defund from these programs and just decrease poverty. And that's why, like, I agree with the taxes too. Like, if rich people have more than enough to give, that's more than enough to just decrease poverty via like socially implementing two-parent households.
You do know this is a single adult with 2 children, right?
Yep, for single parents.
This is no. Single adult with 2 children. This is
Okay.
the upper echelons of basically the most you're gonna usually see people get.
Okay, cool. Even then, we can just decrease their income. I mean, you're more than good on $40,000. I mean, that's my point. You're acting like your position is cut these. You want to decrease these people who are literally starving, and they're going to starve more, and they're going to feel pain more.
Yes.
What I'm saying
that's
is
happening. 1 in 7 American youths. I checked.
Okay, we're not
that number's going to increase. You do know that, right?
Well, wait. That 1 in 7, we're not decreasing their wealth at all. We're talking about the people who are earning $40,000.
What are you talking? No, you.
Do you have any?
There would be a cut of across the whole board. You do know that. It wouldn't just be a cut at this one section. You would get cuts all across the board. For people who used to be making 20,000 to be making 15. For people who used to be making 15 to be making 10. For people who used to be making 10 to be making 5. That's what it's going to be across the board. That's how these programs work. That's how cuts work.
Wait, no, that's not my prescription.
So your prescription is just the people who are making 30,000 now make 25. That's your prescription.
No, not just that. Not just that. I've illicitly outlined multiple points in this graph where I think a cut is necessary. And one of those points is not people who are literally earning $0. It wouldn't be a cut across the board. People who are literally broke, literally starving, they should not get a cut. That's what I've advocated from the start of this debate.
So what you're advocating is...
Do you have like any argument against this?
Is that a joke?
I mean, what you said is you're literally making starving people worse, which is like not what I'm doing at all.
You are. You're actively taking money out of it. Okay, buddy. You have a good day. Okay. You have a good stream. I'm sorry. I can't do this any longer. This is. Yeah. I can't. This is painful. I can't.
See you later, Dylan.
You have a good one. Fucking. Oh my god. I can't.